Money Never Sleeps, episode 22. The great doxing is upon us. Doxing, has been a big issue since I entered the space. And before I was in the space, I was always like, how the fuck am I going to trust anybody in this space? They have these weird names and a picture. I don't know who they are. In the last few years, what's the biggest joy in the space for me is forming close personal in real life relationships with people. And ultimately, I think a lot of us didn't dox for security. And I think now that feels like it was maybe a little overblown. Doxing gives us a chance to see people as people. And so, welcome to the great doxing episode. I'll just let each of you go around and say hi, say your name, and then we'll jump right in the show. Artie, why don't we start with you?
Hey, I'm Artie Handz. I have a meat space name. I'm actually going to give you my meat space name today. Well, imagine that. Yeah, double real docs. My name is Jay Mortensen, 42 years old, former lawyer. Lots of other things that are not very interesting. I won't burden you with them. I'm Artie. Don't worry about it. Jules, what's up?
My name's Jules. I go by Nice Day Jules. Jules is also my meat space name. Fungi.
Yeah, I'm Fungi, GM. Go by at Funghibull on the internet, but something else IRL. And that's all I'm going to share.
And I'm OG. I go by motherfucking OG, baby. All right. So, for many of us who have been in the space, I'm not going to lie, this has been a particularly rough time, particularly for the E-focused crowd. And, me personally, just as I always like to do, about a month ago, I looked at some charts on ETH, and it really did bum me out. And, it's easy to be shaken. But one of the biggest joys of this time is looking around, having been here for years. There's been a coalescence and a wonderful group forming that I'm, so many great people that I'm so excited to call friends. In this kind of doom and gloom that many people face, what are you guys excited about? What's something you think is cool? What's anything that's catching your attention that you think is on your mind and want to talk about? Yo, one of you bitches talk. Guys, all of a sudden, these dirty motherfuckers.
There's nothing exciting. We're all
what do you mean? Artie, that's not true. Artie's actually, look, I'm going to call you out. We won't talk about your own stuff. But Artie, when you hang out with Artie in person, he's quite different than you know him on the web. And I'll tell you, he has a real deep passion for art. And I've had the pleasure of hanging out with all these people in person. And they're all wonderful, committed, really great people. So maybe let me ask a little different. What are you guys each spending time on now that's making you feel, as they say at my kids' school, your cup feel full?
I'll jump in and answer your first question, OG. I think there's so many. There's so many blessings in disguise with a lull. It gives. I'm going to shout these guys out. It gives Schiller the time to become a great and good marketing agency in Web3, or what Artie's doing at Verse to take shape. I think if we would have just jumped off these big, and what OG, of course, what you're doing at 452, if we would have just jumped off from all the Bored Ape Yacht Club mania craze, Web2 and all this big money would have come in and just sucked everything up. It wouldn't give a chance for culture to percolate and things to build. And so, well, that's not a day-to-day number go up hype thing. That's a good thing, I think, overall. So that shit excites me. I love to see my friends building and doing cool stuff. What about you?
I'm happy to chime in if we're going to have a little awkward silence. I think just seeing, kind of similar to Jules, seeing a lot of teams that I've watched do cool and interesting shit for ages evolve. I think I spent a lot of time over the past couple of months just noticing how many experiments are going on with art and with collecting and with on-chain media and stuff. And yeah, it's just very clear that there's a lot of brilliant people fucking around and finding out, which is super, super exciting. And you have teams in the space doing really intensive, thoughtful, high effort, high impact, like art exhibitions and drops. And then you have other teams that are just like introducing this idea of, kind of like liking is the new minting, or what's like plus kind of like collecting, where it's mostly the act rather than the value exchange. That is the thing that's happening. So yeah, I don't know. I've been fascinated by that stuff. Yeah.
Artie, anything you have on this?
Definitely. I mean, I agree with both of those guys. It's the time and space for the people who are really here for the right reasons, right? Who have the time and space to be really creative and have the freedom to do all kinds of things that you're not able to do in a Web 2 space, or a working underneath someone else type of space, or someone's taking 50% of this this income from me space. So there's always the interesting things going on by the committed builders. Specifically in the art world, for me it's just like incredibly exciting right now. There's all kinds of new things being built and platforms popping up, competing. The actual art itself, even though maybe the top line numbers aren't blowing the socks off off everyone, like Art Block Summer 21 or something like that, they're much more sustainable sales numbers, and frankly the art's like better. It's better than ever. There's more good conceptual art, there's more good thoughtful art now than there has been. Where there's more artists who are not weren't in the quote unquote crypto art, or like in that kind of space the last couple of years, who are still but have more traditional ties, or interested in doing things in our space. So it's kind of melding further and further into the traditional art world. Even though the word NFT is still kind of diseased, digital art as a form itself, I think, is gaining more widespread adoption. I think like Refic and things like that have really helped. So I think it's from a pure art perspective, it's like it's squiggle 9999. It's up and to the right only, baby. Like financially, man, it might not be like coming to fruition right now, but in terms of quality and like acceptance and everything else, everything's up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly my feeling. Is like, look, when it was Mania, like insane, stupid shit was happening, and you could just buy anything. When it's like savagery and you're down massively, and the people who are here, no, in a way, like it's just like human beings. Like anybody can be pals when things are great. The only time you know if I'm your friend is when shit's tough. And so what I think is exactly what sort of building on each of you is like, look, I think artists are being pressed to do stuff that's original, that's unique, that's different in a way they weren't before, because you could just rinse, repeat, and everyone's like, well, this fucking run up. So I do think you're seeing not only artists doing stuff like you guys said, and first with the proliferation across all these chains and platforms, people were sort of repeating the same thing across chains and platforms. But I think I'm increasingly like seeing the focus on how to use the medium itself in a way, that uses the strengths of the medium. As you guys know, I've lately spent a lot of time with Jack, and he's like crazy ideas about supply and these other things. And I do think, Artie, like you said, there's artists, thank you X in the physical, like digital, like this physical, digital, ACK. All these people are now like much more thinking of themselves as artists across. Trevor Jones is Bitcoin Angel. You're seeing just like a lot of cross digital and physical. And then I do think the people who are here building, there was a lot of companies that came in and did what they did in Web 2. Hire 1 million people, turn up your cost, and go broke fast. Whereas a lot of people now here are sort of using the medium once again and setting up like a new generation of things to serve this market. And so that's what excites me too, is like, I also think like, look, 21 all new businesses and industries start in the beginning with like a mania, and this mania was exacerbated by COVID and stimulus checks. Art has always been starving artists, a concentrated market driven by the wealth, driven by wealthy people, and what I think I read in a book they call it positional asset. And so I honestly think we're getting to a sustainable thing. And I hate to say it, I think like prices were crazy and some still have to come in. But the people who are out there now who have been putting in the time and are connecting and using this new medium by building relationships with collectors in the community, I think the timeline is always a little longer than we'd like. It's not like 2 years, but in 5, 7, 10 years, I think like this is going to be an absurd revolution. And I think the people who are here grinding will participate. So I'm really excited about that as well. And it's just so much more fun. There's something that feels like there's a core group that has emerged of like, because there's really not. If you look at active wallets, it's like pretty crazy. Like where you look at the buying of how many people are doing it versus. And so I do think it's a cool thing. And I think people who are here are wired a certain way and like in this game together. And it's a fucking dope feeling. So I agree with you guys. What's it been like for each of you to deal with the personal, like one thing that I think about a lot is like, as you said, Artie, NFTs are a bad word. And, we all have parents or partners or siblings or so on. In my case, I get calls every day asking like, what the fuck am I doing still? How dumb am I? Why am I? What's this been like for you guys to live spending your time here in a world where everyone else thinks we're nutballs? Like, how's that been for all of you?
There's another world outside of the timeline. I mean, we're here all the time. I think the three of us for sure. I don't know. You used to have these conversations a lot more when it was like news media stuff, but I don't really encounter them that much. And most of the people that I talk to are building in the space or art adjacent and totally get it. That's me, but I'm sure everybody's a little different.
I told you it was my brother's 60th birthday, and he's like friends with all these big time people. And I meet oh my god, how the fuck am I blanking on his name? The guy who played the elf in Lord of the Rings. He's married to Katy Perry.
All that shit goes over my head. I won't be able to tell.
Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom. So Orlando Bloom's friends with my brother, and then he was like, "So what do you do?" I was like, I'm like in the digital art world. He's like, "You're not in NFTs, are you? Like in that NFT crap?" I was like, like
I am, you freaking elf. Fall back.
Your fucking wife dropped an NFT 2 years ago. So what is on your guy like? Fungi, what are you focused on now, or what's something that you're curious about or been talking about that you think is an area?
I'd say like
you'd like to ask the group.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to like your assessment of like where things were and how a few years ago we were just in this like mad dopamine rush where it's easy to be friends with everyone. It's easy to be bullish on everything. But I feel like back then it's kind of like, it was like monocrop farming, where everyone was just hyper focused on NFTs as like I sell it or I buy it at this price, I sell it for more and I keep going, or very like simple DeFi farming protocols and stuff. I feel like the attention would often, cycle between the two. I feel like what I've noticed be more apparent now is that we're in this like everything everywhere all at once kind of epoch of the space where you have the pump funds and then you have the like culture funds, which is kind of Zora right now. You still have really interesting and arguably way more interesting like DeFi protocols coming out. And a host, just a large fucking bevy of L1s and L2s that I need to learn more about. But
by the way, not to interrupt, on L2s, I was looking. Gui is now literally at let's see. I looked last night. I was like L2's ETH GUI right now is like 1.2.
I was like on my phone. It's like 0.9 something
Yeah, exactly.
earlier. I was like,
Sorry, I had to make you up, but
amazing.
I was gonna laugh like all these motherfuckers like we need L2s. I'm like, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's wild to see. But yeah, so I guess like what I've been thinking a lot about is just as someone who probably spends an outsized portion of time on the like art and culture and content media side of the space, just really interesting to see how all of these things take shape, like on-chain media, pods, music, clips, whatever. I find that really interesting.
What do you think's changed?
Change the I mean, I think that it's becoming more accepted in a way, but it's like also challenging what ownership means right now, where when you're buying something for like 30 cents, like, does that feel like you own it? You know what I mean? Like, does that, it's making me, I guess, like question like the merits and like different types of ownership and what the experience of each is. So yeah, my head's been like in that space quite a lot and using a lot of like, what are you laughing about, Jules?
I'm grinning just because I know that Artie has a total opposite opinion on the Freeman meta, and I'm like excited to see this. Like, it's a good conversation to have with the two of you guys who both love the art and the culture more than anybody I know, but often have different opinions. So it's just that's what I'm smiling at. I'm waiting for Artie to get in there with the Freemans. But I hear you. It's different. I definitely don't feel like I.
But I think what
something.
Fudgy said was really interesting is that this is something like my traditional advice to artists is based on risk reduction and not doing a big mistake. Because in this industry, if you make a big mistake in life, but it's hard to unwind. And so what Fungi's bringing up is these like 30-cent mints. I was totally anti open edition, totally anti free mint, totally supply what's
It's out. It's live, OG. You've said it.
Canceled.
Yeah, canceled. You know what I mean? They're like crazy about supply. And then I think you're right. Like watching Zorro, watching Jack, watching
Make supply great again.
I think like we haven't seen it play out all the way yet. To be fair, Jack is an anomaly to the like Jack is.
That's what I done.
He's the architect, man. He's like, yeah. I don't want to just wax on.
That's the whenever someone has the argument and it's like, oh, let me talk about X copy or Picasso or someone. I'm like, yeah, you're talking about someone whose demand is literally 1,000,000 X everyone else's. Like they're talking on a whole different level. You cannot use that as a comparison. You know what I mean? Like Jack, we can't use Jack as a comparison right now either because his rocket has taken off and is transcended and is going around. It is no longer dealing with this demand issue that everyone else has to deal with, you know. But yeah,
I think that's important. I want to hear you because I'm going to riff on it. Go ahead, hit us.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just going to say I'm not like anti free mint. I'm glad that we're building like consumer apps that are usable and getting people used to tokenizing things. I think it's great when I'm saying things on the timeline that are spicy. It's mostly like trying to protect artists from your average artist from like, here, I'm going to mint all of my stuff here, like my good stuff here, and this is what's going out, and in the hopes of gaining more traction. That's generally like a losing proposition. Using it as a tool of, hey, these are whips, or building an audience in other manners that are thoughtful, I think it can be a very great outlet. So most of my public kind of, spiciness is just being like protecting people from being I'm not saying that rodeo's taking advantage, or people, or Popset, or anyone's taking advantage of, but that model is a little bit of a, like, can be taken advantage of.
Well, I think,
you know what I mean?
As like artists are generally vulnerable, and it's easy to fall into the meta of today. You can see it with artists jumping on a certain chain or an L2 or a free mint or an open edition. And so like, that's an easy thing to fall into. And so I get it. Like I get the counter opinion. I think it's good to have for sure. I'm definitely precious about that stuff. Or just watch it play out for a little bit before you jump in.
Well, I think like, oh, go ahead, OG.
Well, I keep hitting the wrong mute to stop getting. But go ahead, Fungi, and I'll add it.
I was just gonna say, like, I definitely value anyone, pushing caution to artists or other people, creators of any kind, because I do think it's risky. Like, it's on chain. Like, you can't fucking delete it, and I think a lot of people see trends or see mint activity, or I think often it's just like social noise and buzz that maybe feels like it's validating a concept before it's had time to be properly validated and tested and iterated upon. So I think that's really helpful, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna.
But also fuck around and find out. So
no, but actually, here's what I'm sort of in Artie's camp in the sense of like, okay, looking at, I'm not saying numbers are everything. They're one piece of the puzzle, and I think the reason we have like critical awards and curation is to recognize artists for a variety of things. But sales, just like we look at box office in movies, is one indicator that's useful to look at. And so we can argue. I think my takeaway, and look, my first reaction to Jack, it's usually I'm a fucking moron. Every good artist, I'm like, what the fuck is this dumb shit? Like checks, I don't get it. But what I think we can say is, when executed perfectly, the high supply strategy of looking at like building a network through having tons of owners has seemed to work mathematically better. But I'm not, if you look at every sport, every business and so on, there's a couple people who are like so way ahead. And it's unclear if that strategy applied to other artists. Like it's sort of a super high risk, but if it works, big upside. And so I'm more in Artie's camp generally, and we're going to have a supply discussion actually with Jack, Shrimp, and Fungi, and I are going to get on. And but I do continue to think that like for most artists, they have to approach this very carefully because you can't undo supply. In the real world, you can hide prints in a fucking basement and nobody knows where they are. But once that's out there, and so I just think from a risk mitigation and an artist's longevity, and I think we're like 7 to 10 years out still. Like this isn't like next week. And most artists in this space are a lot younger than me. And so I think it's a great question. And so number one, what I'd say is I'm more in Artie's camp in the sense of for an average artist, the job is don't make a huge mistake and make sure your good stuff like gets valued and you build these relationships. I moved collections versus one-on-ones. I agree. And the only other thing I'd say is I do think that as an artist, I have this stupid thing where I say, find 5 words that define what you are. Because the problem is most people chase whatever the quotes meta is. And every time you do that, you're sending a signal that there's nothing, you're not telling anything about you. All you're saying is I follow what's next. A great artist, especially the great satirical artists or the social commentary, I'm biased to Jack and Die. They take each iteration and they respond to it. And if I look at the top artists I like, I've been pretty public about a lot of these people from Pindar, ACK, et cetera. Amador. There's a lot of people responding to what's happening in the world in their art and reflecting it. And I'm super into that. And so if you're using supply or other means to do that, but I just think trying to chase meta and do stuff because it worked for somebody else, unless it is consistent with who you are, what you do, each time you do that, you water down your brand and make who you are less clear in a world where only a select group of people in history, if you look at all art, we've said this before, I've said on the show, like most people, there's not a lot of room for full-time artists in the world. Like the idea we're going to have like millions of people just living as artists is like, in my opinion, still crazy. So anyway, that I think
like the examples you said though, G, like the Die or the ACKs, like again, it's back to Artie's point. Like they've hit their kind of you know, the rocket ship has taken off and they can afford it. I think for a lot of us out there, like, and this is just general thought. It's like, just make sure you're doing your thing and not the thing. And don't be naive that these platforms want a platform fee and that's what they're after, more so than like making sure your career, your art takes off or is seen.
Well, you have to always know how the person you're working with is getting paid. And the way Zora and those things work, of course, like, you know, they're getting paid on that fee. I meant more, but those guys you said, like Jai puts out a ton of work, only sells a little. It's all social commentary responding. And his supply is a reflection of his literally pukes art out of every hole. You know, like he just can't not, whether you get sold it or not for years. I mean, he's very smart about what he sells or not. And so more what I'm saying is he always does die in the context of, so staying true to yourself and not being like, I used to hate it when like T-Hope does a blue thing and then every artist is like, here's my blue. And then somebody else
I love that.
See,
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too, honestly.
Yeah, that's really, that's the culture. That's people picking off of each other and doing stuff. I think that's awesome. I like that stuff.
I love that. Artie, what do you think?
I'm too slow to move on it most of the time, but I appreciate seeing it on the timeline.
I enjoy it on the timeline, but I'm not gonna collect any of it.
Yeah.
Like it has no like long-term meaning, you know, for the most part. But like it's enjoyable. It's marketing.
Well, it's cool if, see, here's my view. If you look at the great satirists, average artists will be like, you did blue? Okay, here's my blue. If it was like, hey, I'm going to do something that shows a critical assessment of how this impacts the culture and embraces it not as a derivative, but as a inspiration for content that reflects about the community and society, I'm cool with that. If it's, hey, blue's popular, I'm going to release 5 flowers in blue. I'm like, you fucking clown. You know what? Well, then next week, if they're going to,
I had an interesting chat with
Spicy.
I know, dude, coming out calling me clown, and like even the term,
I meant like, you know what I meant.
I know. Even the term like derivative and remix, I think, and this is a point that's Virtue. They just did a drop with Did Machine Ghost, who's awesome.
OXDIID.
Chilling that. Check that out. Yeah. Super cool drop.
Love Did, bro.
Oh yeah, he's your dither, bro. He's the dither.
Dude, every piece I put out, I put through Did's post. That's my like post.
That's awesome. He said something interesting though to me about like derivatives and remix, because I was showing him some work and I was like, oh, you know, I use this piece or whatever. And I think the second that it goes through another artist vessel, once it passes through, like it's that artist's thing. It's we use the term derivative, but like it's uniquely mine if I use that color blue or if I remix the X copy. I don't know. It was an interesting point that he brought up, and it made me rethink how I use the term remix or derivative.
I like the term cousin. Why the term cousin is okay. It doesn't work.
The cousin,
so you can kiss it.
You're from the South, bro. We don't kiss our cousins here. It's like the movie Vacation. My dad says I'm the best kisser. Here's my take on this. If it's a derivative or like a copy, it's one thing. But there's artists that succeed. Look, let me say this, right? I always have to be careful because sometimes it's like there's artists who are a cousin of another artist, meaning it's different, but it's in the family, but it's something different and it's cool. Like OSF originally, while I was attracted to it, it's not X copy. It was just like a finance-based OSF thing, but it's sort of like a cousin of, or Jeremy Booth, when I first saw him. Again, I'm not saying it felt like a cousin of Grant Yoon. I don't know how a better way of putting it. So to me, that I understand, or taking, like I said, the input and reflecting it back in a different way, not just I'm going to paint something a color because people are releasing that, or I'm going to do an open edition because everyone's doing open edition, or I'm going to go on this. There has to be a raison d'etre for it.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like they're like vibrationally related, maybe, where like it might not have had anything to do with like someone seeing someone else that was already here. Could have a lot to do with just the experiences that shaped how they look at the world, how they, how they hold their memories in their minds and what they want to create. And yeah, just how that ends up taking form and shape. But it is really interesting to see that there's a lot of artists that, like, I don't know how you guys go about discovering new artists or being like, I'm going to go on an adventure today. Like, I'm going to go just see what I can find. But I find like,
how do you do it? This is a great topic. How do you? I'd like to.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe Jules.
No, I want to answer. I want to hear what you guys have to think about that.
Yes,
But one
yes,
thing
yes.
about just the blue or the remix stuff is like, I think it's worth noting that just like, I think those are just artists celebrating each other. It's much less about the collector. It's just everyone celebrating what someone's doing and being excited about it. And sure, getting some like market momentum or getting some attention from that artist that's having a big attention moment. But I don't know if it's as much about a point of sale. Like that seems more of a pure thing than just jumping in the meta of what is. But
so are you saying if they sell it? How about if they sell it?
Oh, I mean, how much of it really sells? Let's be honest.
That's my point.
Just because it's for sale, does it sell? Like, I mean, that's, you can mint it if that's what you want to put on chain, but is it, it's not your authentic. Well, maybe it is. I don't know.
Okay.
How do you find artists?
How
do you find artists?
Artie,
how do I find artists?
Oh.
Dude, it's way too much time on Twitter, man. I don't think I've ever been like, here, I'm going to look on a particular platform and just like keep search and look through artists on the platform. It's the feed, and it's looking at, I mean, I follow 4,300 people or so, and 3,000 of those are probably different artists. So I'm always on the For You tab, just scrolling and seeing what they retweet and seeing it's seeing what other artists are exciting the artists that I follow and that I trust, because if they're getting excited about something, that's something I should be looking at, and that's something they're looking at to further their practice. They're little meat space AIs. They're trying to soak in information from other artists and build their own practice through these other things. So I'm trying to track the things that they're tracking. So it's heavy Twitter for me. That is not recommended for most people. It is time consuming and difficult. I don't know what the solutions are. If you guys have solutions for how to scale that
is your job
to normal people. That's
your job, right?
It's literally now my job, but I did do it a long time for no money, so
yeah.
But I've always been one of those people though that, like, my friends ask me for like, what are the cool restaurants, because I just like to know what the cool restaurants were. I'd make mixtapes for people in high school and stuff, because I would always be on websites or on old blogs or whatever, like searching for or whatever. That's just like, I like to do that. So it's nice that I get paid to do it now, but it's even for me, it's a grind sometimes,
Fudgy? I have an answer, but
yeah, like I'd say pretty similar. Like I follow a lot of people, like 7,000 something. And yeah, I find Twitter's like hard to beat. Just because the speed with which you can go account to account is faster than anything that's like Web3 connected. They all seem to share like a bit of lag time. But I find like if it's for like what someone's sharing on a social app is like one thing, but then going into the wallets of some of my favorite artists and then just seeing what they're collecting or doing trades for with other artists. I think that's been a really cool way to find people. Less like speculatively, but just like, oh, I really fuck with like this person's style. I feel like they probably like an array of artists that have different but adjacent styles that I might vibe with. And artists I find just have such a higher threshold that has to be crossed for like really loving something. Like it's like when I talk to a lot of collectors and I know fucking nothing. So like if someone asks me like, why do you collect? I'm like, I really vibe with it. Person's cool. I like the art. There's occasionally like, or I'd say somewhat often more deeper responses than that, but it's pretty like left curve for lack of a better term. But whenever I talk to artists like, oh, I noticed you're following this person, or that, I love that piece you just collected. They'll like tell me everything that they know about that artist. And yeah, I find there's just like I don't know, like a stronger filter, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I echo what you guys both said. A couple additional things I do is intermittently I put on my timeline. I ask people to like, hey, what artists are you excited about now? And I get a lot of cool shit. When I do some of these curations for sites, usually those don't totally lead me to artists, but people commenting on the timeline to my things. Like, so I get a lot of when I engage in tweets. I also do find, I used to find object very useful, like surfing artist wallets on objects and using some of the tagging that they had before other people. And I definitely look at artists and people I respect, what they're doing, and then ask them. And then me personally, I'm blessed now. Like I'll usually reach out to the artist directly and start talking to them. Because my view is when you buy art now, fuck you. Well, dude, anybody can do this. I've been doing this for years. I mean, I had 200 followers. I'd reach out to an artist. Most people, if you're polite and nice and you're not being a fuckhead, you're like, hey, I'm interested. Would you tell me? But yeah, artists like takes the yeah, but no, for real. And then I think too, part of what I like to do is like I did shift some focus to like I used to spend most of my time on emerging artists and doing them for my project. I still support a ton of emerging artists through things like Rio residency and the like that introduced me to new people. But I definitely been a bit more focused on established artists. So that's reduced the amount of time. But I do look at what those artists buy. I'm with you. Like, and the other thing I did personally, starting in April 22, I started using all the tools that artists use. That's why I make my like shitty art or whatever. I started in April 22. I started being like, well, look, I learned this with tattoos. Like, if I didn't know how the tattoo was made and how long it, like, you can't see if something's good if you don't know what the tools are and you haven't seen a bunch of it. So I think constantly, like you guys said, I know all of you, like constantly consuming art on the timeline and getting the data and then seeing what the tools themselves do. Like, so I've, learned from AI to GANs to I used ChatGPT to do generative and so on so that I can say, well, look, if I can make this shit really fast, then I know. The other thing I do that's a little trick is I take the art I like, and I've been doing this for years, and it's been a great education in art. And I use the describe function in Midjourney. And so I'll put the piece in there, and it'll give me a description, and it'll give me what the computer thinks and the influences. Then I'll go research those and get a better understanding. And so one of the things I recommend for everyone to just get better is using the AI tools as a way to teach yourself, like use describe, literally /describe in Midjourney. And then you can start seeing, I used to do a test, like if I can recreate this thing in Midjourney by describing and hitting imagine all, help me understand why, like there's something unique here. And so those are some of the maybe less discussed tools. But I think all art has to be authentic, recognizable from the artist, have some kind of clear color palette, and reflect something meaningful and say something meaningful. It can't just be made to like sell the art. So I don't know if that's helpful. Jules, do you have any tips?
There's a secret artist cabal where we all get together.
They do have a bunch of chats, though. I will tell you, there are a bunch of artists.
We decide who the next winner is and who everyone's going to be excited about. And so we get together. We meet at 5 o'clock now. Man, it's getting the
Who's the next winner?
Can't tell you.
How often do you reach out, Jules, and just be like, how the fuck do you make this? Like, I'm super curious.
48 hours. Every 40. If I see something that strikes me, like when you guys were talking about this, I'll do a drop. I don't know this person at all. Enigmatriz blew my mind. this is artist that's doing these cool ASCII stuff, and like, and I reached out to her or him or they, and just said like, this is, you know, so all the time I'm
You
I'm
said
pretty quick to reach
ASCI.
out.
I just had an artist like that. I vague on. Did you see? I just was posting about that. I found an ASCII artist too. I love that shit.
It's dope. I'm just gonna drop it, but I'm quick to just compliment because that shit goes a long way. I love that.
I feel like you're the one that kind of like, I think it was chatting with you and Joe Pease and John Carborn in New York a year ago. And I was like, man, I always want to ask, but I feel like they must be so bored about getting asked that question. And then you guys were like, no, we fucking love it. Like, it's not asked that often, and
it's nice
of the artists who really enjoy their process and have worked super hard to refine it or experiment with it. Yeah, and then we all like, I got to hear from like all of you bits and pieces of how, you know, how it's made.
I was probably sitting there like a kid in a candy store listening to Carborn.
Dude, you and me both. Like, yeah, you get on to like John Carborn too, like Joe's like. Yeah, Joe's Joe, but you
Joe's so like honest and humble, yeah, you know.
And yeah,
people love it. Like I've had, you know, more recently, I've been reaching out to people and like just like, hey, I want to show you some of this work. And the best thing is when you ask about it and what went behind it and what you put into it, what was the process like. It's awesome to talk about that because most artists spend a shit ton of time thinking about it and a shit ton of time throwing stuff at the wall, trying to figure it out, and like. Someone's interested in that it's a lonely process, you know, and so if someone wants to shine a little light in that, it's kind of nice.
Which is the beauty of this tell me I've had artists tell me that talking through it, you know, helps them hone their own understanding of the work too, you know, like you said, like, oh, it's a lonely thing, you're thinking about it, and then when you have to like verbalize it once or twice or 10 times or whatever, you kind of understand it a little bit more, and you can kind of hone the narrative, which gives you a better, you know, deeper understanding of it as well. So our artists have always, I mean, my experience is always people are super excited to talk about their work, you know, because it is expression, right? They're like, it'd be a little bit weird to me if they're like, here, this is my work. I put all this blood, sweat, and tear into this expression. I don't want to talk about it. You know, I mean, like it does feel like intrusive, but at the same time, I think people really generally do want to talk about it.
100%. And I think like, sorry, go ahead, OG.
Go ahead, Jules.
No, I just like, there's always these talks like, oh, marketing art, you know, like how do you market your art? And for me, it's nice to think about how I'm going to talk about it on the timeline. And it does circle back into the time that I'm making it. And again, it's just helping contextualize it or give, it does. It's helpful. You three should get off of this call and go and ask an artist about their process.
I know, Fungi, it's funny you say that. I used to spend all my time on Twitter every single day. Not a day goes by now where I don't speak to at least one artist who's often new and at least 3+. So I spend now most of my time talking to artists about stuff and find it way more rewarding. As Artie said, what I found, I built before this, I was in a different industry, and I would call people. I literally built a whole company just like literally finding people on LinkedIn, reaching out, having calls with them, and you start asking them, and people love to talk about what they are doing and they care about because I think it's their whole life. And if you're really truly interested and you're asking not to take, but you're asking to learn, I have found the response is incredible. And so I think artists are used to people approaching them to take from them when it's genuinely like, yo, I want to see what the fuck. Like, and so I have found I don't know if I buy anything without reaching out to the artist or, you know, even or I'll buy something and then reach out and be like, yo, I dig this shit. Like, tell me more about it. And so to me, that's again, we stand back and ask ourselves when new technologies come out, like when the internet came out, they took like newspapers and they just like put them on the screen the same way. And to some degree, we've done a bit of that with art to start. It's like, yo, here's art here. And then like, here's a picture of art here. And I think we're still in these early days of where this is an incredible thing. Like the fact that I'm like pals with all these artists and like in it with them. And art is a bit like you're betting on the artist really over time to respond to a hyper changing environment in a way like it's a huge undertaking. As I tell you, there's no standard way to make money in this business. There's no career path like you most businesses. You're like, well, I join and do this and go through. It's still totally unclear for most people like what the kind of life is here, and most of us are just showing up. And so, to me, one of the brilliant things is we have a medium that's totally different. And I start in the beginning, like how I ended up building my project is I just go in discords and like ask directly the people whose project was a bunch of questions. And when they see you're really trying to learn and understand and not being a fuckhead, like people really want to help you try to understand. And so to me, if you're not doing that, I know, look, you can't do it with every artist, but I find it the best thing I do is that. And the best thing I do is this, like these just take it immediately into being two people talking. And I've been really blessed that people have been really responsive to that.
This is a good format. I mean, because respectfully, like even the three of you guys can get into your own vacuums, right? Like Fungi, you have the Schiller vacuum where you're going to get fed the Schiller stuff in the Schiller community, and 452, same thing. Like I'm in the Discord, and Artie, you're going to get. So it's nice to mix. It's nice to switch tables, sit at a different table, and see what other people are looking at for sure.
Yeah, we need like an Omegle or whatever for Web3, where you just like it just like puts you in, yeah, with like
what's it called?
other. That's how you pronounce it, right?
I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Some Canadian thing, maybe.
I think it was like one of the first, like you pull it up and it's like a video camera chat with a stranger. And I don't think, yeah, and I think it took some pretty, expected turns over time. Became like not as safe
like chat roulette.
Chat roulette.
Yeah, that.
Chat roulette. Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe chat roulette. But yeah, I feel like that would be interesting for Web3.
I mean, honestly, you can do that if you want. Like one of the things I do think and encourage everybody, and it's interesting because this group here, really is mostly people who do engage with lots of other people, and I would say, each of us has our various strengths and so on. Artie, you're super good at finding these random things that I used to have a lot of fun with Rob. I always think it was from Foundation, but RTD to the moon. He and I, when I first started in the game, would like constantly be flagging artists, and then he'd be like, "Have you seen this?" And I would screenshot my DMs if I'd like been early. And so I do think that what I think now that's different about discovering artists is there's not the same urgency, and so you can take the time to watch them. I know everybody in this space. I watched them for a while because the great news about this space is like, unlike in the real world, you can see what they're saying, you can see their wallets, you can see what they do. And then the space is small enough, you can like ask around and see like what other people think of them. And so to me, using all those tools is like a critical part of succeeding and having fun.
It's to me this space is just so much more fun than like the traditional art model, like for the reasons you just said. It's like I'm not going to a gallery, like there's no these platforms. I'm not going to a specific thing. I'm shopping from home. So like easy ass dopamine rush, right? But also like the access. So I'm in all of you guys' homes right now. I can, all these artists that I'm working with and curating and presenting for Artie Gallery, I've been in their homes. I've had beers with them. Yes, it's through the computer, but like I've regardless of the money made or portfolio or art or whatever, like there are very few places in the world that I could go without tweeting, "Hey, I'm going to be here for this few days," and not know somebody there or somebody who's like, "Hey, my friend's here," or talk to this person. And that's like, not not something you can get a lot of places, and that's like a really special. And it's like creative, cool people all over the world.
That's what I was about to
It's
say.
not like oh cool, I know this marketing guy from blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, so like there's a difference. Like, there's cool people all over the world
who survived here and here now. I always say it's not just talking about the art and NFTs. It's actually all the other stuff on how they interact and the stuff like Wavy Wave, where it's a totally separate world, and it actually gets harder and harder for me to operate outside of that world as a result, because I'm like, everything makes sense here.
Well, I think like we all like I'm probably going to sound like a broken record because I've definitely said this a couple other times, but like crypto is like a great sorting filter. The art side of crypto and with NFTs and is another great sorting filter, as is like just a down horrendous period of market activity, including like a up bigly period of dopamine where people are acting like idiots and a lot of people are acting not great, not necessarily in service of the community or people who think that they're friends. So I feel like through all of that, you get connected with just so many people that you would want to spend time with. Like you have philosophical shared beliefs, you have life experiences that are very similar often, you have just interests that are really similar, and I think I noticed that after a while of just meeting people in the real world, where I was like, oh, it's different in the meat space because you don't know what those filters are. All you know is like, oh, we happen to be here in this physical place at the same time. That's all I know about you, and whatever it is you're wearing or something. But yeah, it's like makes for like reduces so much friction of just getting to know people. Like I've definitely appreciated that. Yeah.
Actually, building on that, how do you guys find, like, one of the things I'm finding difficult is just the multitude of platforms and things that I have to be on now. Like when it was ETH, a little Tez, and Twitter, it was okay. How do you guys deal with the challenge of like Telegram, WhatsApp, like, and whatever other million fucking things you're supposed to do? Like, that's been a stressor for me. How do you guys handle all that?
poorly.
Yeah, with ADHD, it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
It handles most of us, probably. Yeah.
Well said.
No, for real, you guys find it's been a kind of a stressor for me. How do you guys handle it? I'm curious.
So it's definitely a stressor for me. I feel like I'm always behind, especially with new job. I'm like, there's multiple channels I like legitimately I'm getting paid to monitor, and I'm getting those lost within these other things, and I have 60 tabs open. So I have a box with like double monitors back there. So I'm gonna increase my monitor size so I can like have some more like dedicated space to a few different things. But generally, it's still just a huge problem. Like, and then I'm only really participating in like the art side. I'm not buying and trading NFTs on like SEI and SUI and Barachain, and like I know these things exist through crypto Twitter, but like I'm not messing around with any. That's too out of my bag. But just even in the art scene, there's
so you're saying define your focus is a starting point.
You must dabble a little bit in some Solana shitcoins, though, right? You got Bird Eye open on a tab.
Yeah, I mean, not regularly, but I do sometimes. Like you had a little Solana launch. I might have made a little bit of money on that, just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of Solana coins, but yeah, I mean, it's not regularly.
How's everybody making money off my art and projects but me? I need to get to the check. I got to figure this out.
I've been selling prints of it at the local market, actually.
Let's go. Let's go.
Well, hold on. You started with the idea of making money. I thought this was NFTs. You could make money. All I did was
now, but that I mean, most people. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, yeah, screw the making money part. Like, you dropped 50 new pieces to people by CYDR. Like, and we were talking earlier about the like remix versus derivative. The derivative is a bad word. If something's derivative, it's bad. If it's a remix, it's cool. It means it was successful. And CYDR is like one of the ultimate remix artists. Like, he like all the Britney thing. Like, that is a remix, right? Like, it's adding a layer of meaning on top of it, and the
Yeah, that
demo
was
fucking
cool.
looks super cool. So like, yeah,
That's
props for that.
those.
Like, that was badass.
It's all cider. To me, those are so much cider's flowers, though. Like that's a fun example of like I don't even look at them as remixes or derivatives or anything. Like those are more him than me, and I lived with him for a long time. I love, yeah.
Well, I think
He's a
that's
good
different.
example
It's a
of
good
that.
example of like you working with another artist on your project and expanding it by like reinterpreting that within the confines of the project itself and the collectors who are there. That's very different than if he had separately decided to make flowers on his own and like sell them separately. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a perfect
Sure.
example of great collaboration that represents the values of the space, rewards your holders, and is like building community. So to me, that's a really cool thing. My answer, by the way, on this is I finally capitulated and just saying, like, I can't fuck with all this shit. I'll do my best. And all I can do is what I can do. Otherwise, you feel like shit all the time, not being able to keep up with anything.
Well, you guys are all. I mean, credit to the three of you. You make yourself pretty accessible. Like I can get Fungi on if I jump on a Schiller space and request to speak. Like I can connect with you, and like 452, you have a Discord that can jump into, and you know, Artie, you're always open to DMs from artists. So I think like you know, some of the onus is on the creatives that want to be seen by you to just get out there and get in front of you, and less about, you know, it can flow both ways, I guess.
Yeah,
That's how
I definitely.
mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, on the managing like all of these social platforms, it's fucking brutal. Like it's
fucking
not
brutal.
easy. Like I don't think it's easy on anyone. Like I try and like bucket my time into them. But yeah, and mostly just like that meme of a guy biking with like 100 phones in front of his face. Like that's what I feel like we all resonate with all day long. And then I just don't check shit on the weekend. Like I've made a point for a few months to just not do like, I don't like rarely post. Like I'll open Twitter for, 20 minutes and share some art or something. But yeah.
By the way, phone discipline to me is the number one step to happiness, which is
huge. Like cutting off a phone for the first 45 hour of your day is an amazing life changer. I'm starting to do this now, so I'm going to go please you. If you can start your day,
I have no fucking idea. It's almost 2:00. What's your guys' time constraint? You want to go 5 more minutes, or you want more?
Time is a flat circle, man.
Yeah,
exactly.
Run it.
Time is a flat
What's your
circle.
time constraint?
Fuck you mean? Time is a flat circle. By the way, Artie and I now live like 15 or 20 minutes apart.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool.
Team Marin.
Team Marin. Okay. In our last 5 or 10 minutes. Go ahead, Jules.
OG, I'm down to run it as long as you guys can. This is awesome. I think it's fun.
I think let's keep. Let's go 10 or 15 minutes most, because I think it keeps the episodes clean and it's harder on our listeners. So people come in and off, but in and out.
This was subjected to too much of us.
It's that in and out, like when Artie comes over, they come in and out.
The back door.
15 minutes is too far, if you ask me. You need to move
5 or 10 minutes. Well, what I'd like is
let's talk for 5 to 10 minutes about if we should take another 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah.
You know what? By the way, I love Sergino got me into the announcement of the announcement, and now I'm so fucking into it. Like for everything, yeah. Let's have a 5-minute discussion of whether we should go on for 5 minutes. Shit's just like so fucking hilarious to me. Anything? How about what trips you guys going on, Marfa?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be there.
You, Artie?
No, I can't do 2 trips to Texas in November, man. Actually, it'd make it 3 because I go home for Thanksgiving, and then I'm also going to a Cowboys game separately because I'm a Cowboys season ticket holder, and I just can't do 3 trips in there. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so
I love Marfa.
Marfa's gonna be great. Artie won't be there, so we're hyped. The rest of us.
I'm looking forward to that.
What I would like to finish.
What about anybody going to Miami?
Yeah, I'm gonna do bad.
Yeah, I'll be in Miami. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. Last year I booked Miami, canceled, then rebooked. My love-hate with Miami is it is literally the biggest fucking nightmare to get around. The best thing that happened to me, I got stuck in an Uber with
it's not it doesn't have to be a pain to get around, OG. You gotta just rent a Vespa.
Beach or commit to fucking
no, rent a Vespa and you're good on both sides.
Well, I'm not
I
driving.
rented a Vespa last
with us.
Can you get one with a sidecar next time, Jules?
I got smoked on my motorcycle at 40 miles an hour on 880. No fucking chance of my doing that again, man. Seriously, it's not me I'm worried about. It's the drivers, Ubers, everyone whipping. I don't fuck around with that anymore. I literally was like, got hit 40 miles an hour on the highway, slid under a truck. It was scary as fuck. The motorcycle was a write-off, like 0. And I fucking walked away. I was in armor. And I'm not doing that shit in traffic again. So,
it's a Vespa.
Send it.
It'll be fine.
It bounces. How do you guys feel about doxing as we wrap up? I know it's stressful coming in. We had nice chats with each of you, and it was fun for me in a way because I remember when I was about to dox, and I'm no one, but back then I was like super no one. I had like 200, whatever. I didn't matter. And even me, I was stressed as fuck. All you guys have built big followings and career and communities for years in here. And I didn't want to, I feel like we got through the doxing quick. How are you feeling about doxing?
I feel good. For me, it was like a natural evolution. Just one of those, like, it felt like it was time with taking like this new job and trying to be more than just punk on the internet. I try to be a little bit more, moving my career into a more punk and meat space type of space. So I wanted to put my face out there and show people more than just the spiciness that I mostly put on the internet. So it felt like the right time for me. I was definitely nervous, but that's more of like a pure social anxiety thing. So
actually, I'm glad you shared that. I think that's really human. I was super nervous when I did it.
Like definitely a little like nervous in like a weird. I think I just like hate being on camera, like, or have historically. Like I was always the person at the event on like the comfy seats in the corner by the bar, and not in the middle of a crowd. Like I've just always been like a bit introverted. But yeah, kind of similarly, like I wanted to see, kind of stumbled into having a digital identity. Never used Twitter before. And then it's like, okay, well, it'd be kind of interesting if I could like build a company and become maybe trusted over time as a JPEG. And also was curious, like, would that cause any rift? Like, would there be a one-to-one experience of like digital and IRL identity, or would there be some like existential crisis at some point where I'm like, oh, I'm different here, you know what I mean? And then just found like, oh no, I'm actually very comfortable being myself on the internet. And like seem to have, from my perspective, you guys can call me wrong, call me out of my bullshit, but I feel like I've been able to be somewhat trusted over the past few years. And it felt like, the experiment, if you could call it that, had just kind of played out where I've turned down a lot of opportunities to like do stuff like this and or panels at conferences. I always go and like, and we'll be the first to give someone a hug and tell them, hey, I'm that like stranger on the internet that, that we've, talked on Twitter before. But yeah, it just felt like probably end up having a better time.
You will.
Putting my face out there.
Jules,
yeah, same. I think it's like one of those things that nobody really cares as much as you do about the thing.
Right.
It's just like whatever. And so I am an overthinker about stuff, and I know it's something you can't reel back in, which was my biggest hesitation. So you can't undox, but same. It's just I think that everybody here that just docs has a really valuable opinion and says great stuff and is here for the right reasons, and the more opportunities that we all get to talk about that in front of people is going to help push the space. So I was for it, and thank you OG for like making a fun space to do it, providing this kind of this campfire to sit around and chat. It's awesome. And I don't know. Yeah. So send it.
Well, what a wonderful episode. Stay on for 1 minute after, guys. But I got to tell you, there's some episodes where I feel the time going a little different. I looked up and we were through an hour and I didn't even realize it. And I'm blessed. You guys are all my friends and we talk and hang offline. And I'm so happy that the space gets to see all of you. And I think one of the advantages of doxing is it turns you from just a kind of a image on a screen and words like to a human being. And so you're all wonderful human beings, wonderful friends, and wonderful contributors to the space. And so I'm so thankful you came on the show today. What a fun, cool thing. And Money Never Sleeps, episode 22, the great doxing has occurred. And love you guys. Couldn't be happy to have you. And much love to the audience. All your support is so appreciated. We got to start going out with the theme song. All right.
Don't have shit. Peace. Yeah, thanks, OG.